Thank you. All right, guys, how are you? You feeling good? Cool. Have you guys checked out any of the other fashion talks yet going on? Oh, we have one here. All right, so we'll catch up together now. And how about in the audience? Is anyone in fashion? No. In Web3? Yeah. Builders, part of companies. Yeah. Great. All right. So I'll get started just with a quick story. You probably know this film, The Matrix. So there's this point when Neo, the main character, he has to make a decision. Is he going to take one pill that brings him to this new unknown reality, or does he stay in his previous life where it's comfortable, but he knows just something is just a bit off? So you can choose whatever color you want for the pill. I chose gold since I'm in fashion. But I just want to share with you my story of how I came to Web3 fashion. So it was 2019. I don't know if trigger alert, you probably have some memories of this year. I was working in Paris at a luxury fashion house, and for me, I'm a designer. It took about 15 years to get to this point. I had interned at like 11 companies, just trying to scale this fashion industry and really finally get to where I thought was like the pinnacle of success, which was for me in Paris. So how that actually looked as a designer, we were working in studios. We would often fly to the factory. Everything was very physical. And so that meant a lot of time in a plane, a lot of shipping, a lot of materials. And then in 2019, all of that came to a stop. So that meant the office closed, the company closed, the city closed, the country closed, and then the world closed. Right? And so it wasn't just me that was just now completely out of a job, had no idea what I was going to do next, but everyone. I think about half of the workforce was fired, and we just were all kind of lost, like looking for what is the next thing? What's the next step? So I'm like a bit depressed. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And so I look in my Instagram because, you know, a little dopamine while you start to scroll. And I look at my messages. And it's from a collective of fashion designers that are getting into this thing called Web3. I'm like, what is that? And so like little did I know that was the start of my adventure with digital and really coming to new ideas and things that can really bring fashion to a new level that's more sustainable and inclusive. So let's talk about what is Fashion 3.0. And so for me, maybe I'm a little idealistic, but I see fashion to have the opportunity to be a tool, not only for individual empowerment, but connection between consumer and brand, as well as like the full ecosystem. How do we actually make fashion give back to the environment versus just take? And so these are just tools, and if we don't speak about context, then we just kind of get lost, I think, in the details. So these are like the three tools, which I'm sure you know more than me. I'm a fashion designer, but that I really consider in my new tool stack. So the first, obviously, AI, very big this year. How do we use it now in the design process to visualize more quickly, to go further than we could before? Not only visually, but also written, kind of go between the two to become more intelligent with how we design our fashion products or products in general. The second, 3D, it's really not new to the fashion industry. We've been using it in development and pattern making, trying to make it more sustainable in the process. But what is new is the association now with the blockchain, with the thing called NFTs, to really bring scarcity and value to not just the final physical product, but even the digital product itself. So these are a couple of my PFPs. I don't think many people match their presentations. Maybe it's just the fashion people, I don't know. But so these are all different identities that I've had in the past 4 years. Like, who am I connected to? What kind of space am I taking? Is it in a metaverse space? Is it physical? I make my own. I like to belong to other communities. So let's see, we have like some sweatshirts here. We have anyone in a suit? We had more suits yesterday, I think. They're on break today, but they're back at the office, I think. But yeah, so like, do you want your digital identity to match your physical, or do you want to be like anonymous, degen, and totally unconnected? So you have this opportunity now with Web3, but then the question is, how do you take what you wear and bridge it across these different environments? So, how does everyone feel about this word? I know we just talked about it. Phygital. Yeah. It's kind of cringe, but it still works really well. So another little story about phygital. About the same time, 4 years ago, I was in Clubhouse. I had a room. Is anyone else here in Clubhouse? Yeah, all right, you remember these times. So this room was called The Future of Phygital. Like, no one understood it. Like, this is a little complicated of a title. But my goal was like, how do we take physical and digital approaches in fashion, and how to like start solving some problems and coming together. So I had one episode where I brought Tracy, who is the founder of a sustainable fashion jewelry brand, and then Zuzi, and she was the founder of a digital-only marketplace of jewelry and NFTs. So Tracy, we show up, she's very skeptical. She's like, why would I use an NFT? What's the ROI? Can you like give me more financial details on this? And Susie's like, Tracy, it's really the start. Like, but let's like try, let's experiment together. Let's see what we can come up with to start to kind of like balance out the two processes to make something even cooler. So we had COVID, so no one can now touch Tracy's products, but now they can experience them in augmented reality, and then they can own that digital asset. So still up to you guys if you want to say phygital or not. But what I'm going to say, and maybe you want to start saying it as well, it's another word. It may or may not be more or less complicated. I call it meta-reality. And so what it means is I see identity to be less two sides and more gray. So I think about it in three kind of areas of how you can express yourself. So I started one of the first Web3 fashion labels, also about the same time as COVID. And this is how we approach this idea of having like three identities per three spaces. So we think about it almost in layers, and also each space really has different kind of constraints. So in a virtual space, we call this larger than life. So it's really it has the essence in the title. You are unlimited. You can be whatever you want to be. You're unbound by location, by species. You can be a ball of light. Like, you can really do whatever you want. So we like to play that up. And then we have ORL, which we call on real life. And so this is the more augmented. How do we still be with each other in a physical space and almost level up that experience together? And then the third, IRL, that's obviously what we're most familiar with, the physical side of in real life. So let's go a little deeper. So LTL, larger than life, like I mentioned, freedom of expression. You are normally dressed as an avatar, so you can be whatever form you'd like, as long as you kind of tailor that digital garment to that form. You have unreal materials. It can be on fire. It could be ice. As well as the opportunity to now get really immersed in these gaming worlds. And we had a couple presentations today that were interesting, speaking about the different mechanics and how we can play into that. But that doesn't end just with the game. It also can transform your wearables. So let's say you complete a challenge, you can now power up your wearable, and it's almost a new form of flexing. So this is an example of a showcase we did. Does everybody know Decentraland? Familiar? Yeah, a couple. Have you been in the platform or played around? Yeah. Yeah, for a designer, it's not the sexiest platform. Like, we like, you know, high fidelity, like detail. But I was very impressed with the ecosystem that was behind it. And powered by Mana, there was something called Metaverse Fashion Week that happened about a year and a half ago. And it was quite amazing. I could go up to any player, I could immediately see what's in their closet, and then I could immediately bid on it and start to like buy from them, just like a physical secondary marketplace. I was like, this is really interesting. So that was an example of a larger than life. And so then on real life, so also another exhibit that we did, really trying to give another level of engagement and experience to the physical, something that has a more surprise. And so we did things like a hologram, transforming our pieces into new formats, but visible together in a physical space. And so the thing I think about AR is like we still are struggling a bit with like tracking to our bodies. It kind of like the sleeve cuts off, or like your head is over here and the arm is over here. So yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. So we're still working on the realism aspect of that, but what's really interesting is how you can gamify, how you can animate, and then also how you can geolocate. So you can be different places and even have it like gated to specific location. So I think that's probably the best use case for something like AR. And this is another way of wearing on real life fashion. It's probably the first use case for digital fashion. And so these are some examples of different brands. And most recently, I was the beta tester for Dress X Me. It's basically like an AI tool that within 5 seconds, you put in a prompt, you put up your photo, and then you can be a knight, I guess is what I wanted to be at that time. But yeah, so this is more of like a high fidelity way, like as a designer, as a label, we can show the true integrity of the piece because we do have to kind of adapt it based on these different spaces. And so the last one, IRL, in real life. I say this one last because I believe it's kind of like an inverted pyramid. So we have the digital, right? We don't have any physical waste at this point. And then we kind of taper last to the physical. So I believe we should only have physical when we know it's in demand and we know someone's gonna want it, or we just have waste. And that's what, in fashion, we have a big problem with. So how do we actually make physical more sustainable? Right, that might look more like having NFTs as pre-order. We know exactly what the demand's gonna be, and then it's burned as you redeem that in real life. And that means like using sustainable materials in a circular life cycle, and also a made-to-order production. So it's still, have quite a long time, I think, till it's really efficient, but we're definitely at the start with things like 3D printing and doing small batches with factories. And has everyone heard of the digital product passport? The DPP, it's like the hot topic with AI. Mostly because of legislation, so that will always, I think, make things happen faster. But basically, in the future, you'll have your sweatshirt and you'll know exactly what is the material, where was it made, and even things like how do I repair it, where do I go, how do I resell it, and so it'll really help to facilitate that circular economy that we need very dearly. So this is a project that I'm an advisor on called CrowdMuse. It's quite cool. It's the only one I've seen so far that it's a physical marketplace but with NFTs. And it's quite amazing as a designer, since at the start, you very clearly define what's the percentage that everyone gets at the start. And immediately when it's purchased, it automatically goes to their wallets. So quite cool for a designer. So you have, right, the pattern maker, you have the graphic designer, you have the supplier, and then you have the factory. So immediately upon purchase, they all get their splits. So maybe you don't like the materiality formula and you want to flex the same symbol across like your different identities. So like this like crazy head. So these are the first wearable NFT earrings that we did in 2021, and also played with taking the same look but putting it across the different spaces. So we had on avatar, print on demand for the physical, and then the AR version, or the photo placement here. So if we talk on Zoom or G-Meets, you'll probably see me wearing these. The bottom of them flash, and so like it'll probably be the first thing that we talk about. It'll be the icebreaker, so that's like a new way to have calls. But you did? Amazing. All right, well, we wear them the next time we talk. Too bad we can't wear them now, but get the physical ones. But what I realized that was really interesting was that these digital, I actually had more value in my digital earrings than any physical jewelry. It's like, so now the shift is, it's totally open, right? I think like collectors here are quite familiar with like having very expensive JPEGs, and that this has as much value in the digital as now we do in the physical. And also what's interesting is the data and the information you can get from digital products or connected physical products. So from this, we know how many times it was tried on, we know where it was tried on, how many hours it was worn, so almost a year, and how many plays, and then all while zero resources being wasted physically. So if we're going to have different identity. That means we're going to make our products differently. And so where the magic is really with that 3D file. But within the last year, we've started to adapt and integrate a lot more AI tools, whether it's something like Midjourney or others, really to kind of help us with the process of ideation, visualization, and then selection of that final design. And like I mentioned, the 3D file. So this is a moment, right, where we visualize in 3D, usually in whichever software kind of is based on the process of the company. And then you determine, like, where do you want to use that product, right? So we have it in the larger than life. So that either is a digital collectible, it's like the ultimate representation, or we put it in a gaming environment, which can be a high poly or lower poly. High poly might be something like spatial, low poly, more like Decentraland. And then we have ORL, so that's the augmented. And like I mentioned, you can animate it, you can gamify it, and you can put it connected to a location. And then lastly, which I still believe should be the last step after we have the demand confirmed, is the sampling. It's the technical file, it's the sizing, it's the production. So how do we actually now wear it? And so if you're getting started, if anyone's interested to like start a fashion project, these are just like some of the tools that I use with my own brand, with the clients that I support, just to kind of get started. So like I mentioned, some of the metaverse platforms and the larger than life. Then there was the on real life, some different AR platforms that are quite accessible that we've experimented with. And then in real life, these are some pretty interesting factories that do 3D printing for shoes like Zellerfeld, or on-demand physical, which is still a bit complicated but coming. And then these are the additional tools that we use like in the design process. So we have AI, 3D, and digital product passport. So these are just some examples of the upcoming labels that you'll see. So they are totally digitally native, digital first, and then depending on the utility, on the needs of their community, they'll accommodate their products to those different spaces. So thank you. That's what I have for you on Fashion 3.0. If you want to chat more about it, if you want to know how to get started, or if you want to share your Web3 origin story with me, feel free to come have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was indeed so cool. I learned so much. And what I find interesting, you mentioned phygital, right? And you also had this larger than life, in real life, like and
on real life.
And and what I find interesting there, so someone mentioned it to me once, is that actually the digital world is also real life, right? So I mean the worlds are like there are no borders anymore. And we see this, I think fashion it's a good example, and the things you brought, I think we can see it that everything is interconnected, and we have this kind of larger than life, but it's still real life then, and we have this kind of physical world, right? So, but interesting to see what is happening, and I think the future is really exciting, so will be exciting. So thank you very much. And other questions? We might have time for one question.
There's no wrong question.
If not, probably
I'll be right up here.
Be around. So thank you again, and this is your applause.
Thank you.